And now, coming at you from the 5-Star Physique Studio in Knoxville, Tennessee, this is The Drop Set with your host, Darren Starr.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 182 of The Drop Set. Once again, we're live. Well, not live. We're live right now. You're watching this. It's on YouTube. It's pre-recorded. You get how the whole thing works. I am here with Jacob Koch. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing great.
I'm sorry, Dr. Jacob Koch.
Whatever. Doctor in my office. You can call me Mr. Jacob, whatever.
Mr. Jacob. Gotcha. Cool. So, Jacob, full disclosure, you are a client of mine. Mm-hmm. You recently competed?
Yep.
First time.
Yes, sir.
First time. So what I put out the call and I'm like, hey, if anybody has any ideas for guests, let me know. And you're like, hey, I'd love to be on and talk about my experience. And I'm like, holy crap, that's a great idea, because you hear from all these people, there's a lot of guests on podcasts who are pros, who have done 1 billion shows, and they're operating at a really high level. But I'm interested in the perspective, and I've had this on the podcast before, but it's been a while, of somebody who's like new at this and just kind of getting started and getting their feet wet. So hence, here you are. So I have one question for you, and I saw before when we were talking before we started the interview, you had your hands up. You had some kind of a funky ring on there. Is that something special?
That's just a titanium ring off Amazon. That's all it is.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I actually used to have an hour ring, but this is just a $13 titanium ring off Amazon.
Okay, all right. So my wife got one of those smart rings recently, and she's been wearing it, and it like fits on a little charger at night, and it tracks her sleep and all that stuff. I didn't know if it was something like that.
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, and it looks just like that. So
yeah.
All right. So you are now how far post show?
It's about almost 2 weeks now. Saturday will be 2 weeks. So yeah, 12 days.
Okay. All right. And what was the show? Tell us a little bit about the venue and where it was and what it was.
The full name. I got to look at the full name.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago and you don't remember? You sound like me.
I know, it's already gone. It was the All States Atlanta Invitational.
Okay.
New show. It was the first year they'd ever done it. And it was, from what you told me, it was a smaller show.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah, it sounded like it.
First time I had no idea what to expect. It seemed normal to me. But
did you get an invite?
There was no invite. I invited myself, I guess. So I was actually confused by that because it said invitational. And I thought, can I register for this? So I had to ask, and it was just,
It's just a stupid name.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Typically, if you're going to have a show that's an invitational, they actually have to invite you. But hey,
exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, it was not invitational.
It's like they also could have called it the Atlanta Classic, even if it was the first year doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, names mean nothing. Okay. So we'll work up to show day because I want to talk about that, but I figure we should kind of take the viewers and the listeners here on a little bit of a journey. And so let's work on our plot and character development first, kind of do a little bit of world building here. So what got you into the mode where you're like, hey, I think I want to do a show? Kind of give us a little like a 2-minute backstory and give us your thought process before you ever decided to actually sign up for something.
Okay. I mean, my long story is I was a fat kid, and then eventually I lost some weight when I was a teenager. And then my 20s, progressively getting in better shape. My 30s, progressively getting in better shape. So I'm 42 now, and I never had any goals to do a show. I started listening to your podcast probably like 2-3 years ago, and mostly for the advice on weightlifting, on bodybuilding, on everything. Whenever you talk about a show, I kind of tune you out. I tune it out. Yeah, okay, that's for the other people who do shows.
I think a lot of people do that. That's fair.
Yep. So then, a year. I mean, I guess it was after COVID. I started putting on weight, and finally just kind of snapped out of it and thought I need to snap out of it somehow. So signed up with you in May, and thought if I'm going to get in the best shape ever, then I'm going to do a show. I'm going to set a deadline. I'm going to say I'm going to do the show. And so decided, I think I started working with you in May. Show was in April. That was kind of the deadline, or the target was April, May. So I tried so many times to get in great shape or cut down or and tried tons and tons of different things. But setting a deadline for a show, I never had any aspirations to win or do anything great. And I did not win, but
spoiler alert. Hello. Come on.
But it was all about, for me, it was all about having a deadline where it got me really, really serious. Because I knew if I'm going to be up there, if I'm going to do this, I want to do my best. I want to look good. I don't want to embarrass myself.
Okay. So do you think that in all the stuff that you tried before, that might have been the missing ingredient? You didn't have something there to kind of like make you take it seriously for long enough to really let it work?
That was one. And then accountability was the other. So having a coach, having you coaching. So those two things, accountability and yeah, having the show date, those two things just clicked it into gear. For sure.
Yeah. I tell you what, sometimes my most powerful role is just that of big brother. Like even if I don't do anything, I'm just sitting there watching, I'm giving you disapproving looks, and that's all it takes.
Yep. I definitely had some of that this year. I was like, oh, I tell Darren about this. So,
yeah. Gotta fess up.
It was helpful for sure.
Cool. So we spent a good bit of time, and we got started. We kind of knew what the goal was, roughly when, and we got started, and we're like, well, let's focus on a growth phase. So if I remember correctly, I didn't go back and check notes, but I think we pretty much jumped right into that pretty quickly, focusing on building.
Yeah, we did it pretty quickly, but we cut down first.
That's right. I do remember that.
What was interesting because I had done, man, over the years, I've gotten in better and better shape over the years, but I've tried all the different fads. I mean, I did keto for years, and I always said, oh man, I don't do well with carbohydrates, and I'd always cut low carbohydrates. I was that type of person. I always said carbohydrates make me fat, that type of thing. And I did intermittent fasting, and I tried all these things. They helped. They got me to a level, but eventually I just plateaued, and I couldn't cut down any further. And so I kind of stagnated there. DEXA scans, for whatever those are worth, I got to like 6% body fat, something like that. But sorry, I won't say those numbers if you don't want me to.
That's all right. I don't take offense. I just don't put a lot of stock in them.
Okay. But I stagnated there for a while. But then when I had never done flexible dieting, never done truly tracking macros. And that's when we started, you had me cut for about 8 weeks. And then I got leaner than I'd ever been in my life. So that was awesome. And then we started to grow. So I was immediately convinced, man, flexible dieting's awesome.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's cool. And I don't want to sound like a commercial for anything, but I mean, it's not a great fit for everybody. I think it's a good fit for most people if they're willing to put in the work in as far as understanding how it works, and then just like the daily routine maintenance of keeping up with stuff and tracking things. And the question is that additional work worth the variability that you can have in food choices and kind of controlling your own destiny to some extent? For you, it clearly is.
Yeah, definitely. And there are days where, I don't feel like tracking, but it definitely was super helpful.
And that's me every day. I don't feel like tracking ever, which is why I just create a plan and I just follow it. And then for me, it's just copy paste. I'm not going to track my food. I tracked this crap yesterday. So why do it again? I always tell people, like, make it as simple as possible.
Yep. Yeah. And that's I do something along those lines. I try to make it. I've got like, okay, I eat the same thing every morning and just plug it in. Yeah.
Yeah, and you leave yourself maybe a couple slots where it's like, well, this can be, A, B, or C, and this could be X, Y, or Z, and you've got kind of portions set up where you can just kind of take and plug that in, and your numbers are going to turn out basically the same anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, kind of at the end of the day, something, especially when I was getting really precise towards the end and cutting for competition, I kind of like cobbled together, okay, I need this much fat, this much protein, so I try to get it exactly. I was probably a little more meticulous than the average person, but
that's fair.
I knew exact amounts, and my Fitness Pal makes it easy. So
they do. Yeah. I still come across people every now and then who are tracking on pencil and paper. You're nodding. Was that you for a while?
I tried. Well, no, I tried that before smartphones, and it was a disaster.
Oh, way back in the day.
Yeah. I think I tried it. Yeah. 2006 or 2007. And it didn't last long.
I remember that too. Yeah. I remember distinctly, like the first time I went into a public space and saw somebody holding an iPhone. Like that's very much like a definitive marker in my life. That's like the end of the pre-smartphone era for me. But I can remember like what I was doing at that time. I can remember the phone that I had, flip phone. If you push the internet button on it, you're like, oh God, no, please get out of there. It's going to start charging me an arm and a leg for this access. So, people who are like, 19, 20, 21 listening to this right now, they have no clue what we're talking about.
Yeah. Back when we used to get charged by the text.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that. Yeah. Oh, or, you had to wait until like after 8 p.m. to call people out of network.
Absolutely.
So it didn't count against your minutes. Okay, well, this is officially now the Old Fogey podcast. This is embarrassing. So here's a multiple choice question for you. This is kind of an easy one. So we did a little mini cut. We went into a growth phase. You did the whole pre-contest phase into a show, went through show day, rebounded. Now we're in the post-show phase. Which was the hardest of those sections for you and why? Ooh, I stumped him.
This phase, I'm actually having a hard time with the post-show phase.
Really?
Yeah. I actually, the cutting down in the last 3-4 weeks, it was a challenge, but it was not as hard as I expected. I don't know why. It's interesting. I almost felt more full then than I do now. So it's like I introduced more junky carbohydrates. I felt like I was eating more protein, more consistent protein, more chicken, things like that. So I think the growth phase was hard because I just started feeling really sloppy towards the end, and I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's a little hard now coming out of it. I guess I haven't set a definite goal now. Yeah, this is a little bit challenging now.
That's the thing for a lot of people, because when you're working towards a show, you're 3, 4, 5 weeks out, it gets kind of hard, but at that point you're so laser focused on it, it doesn't matter.
That was exactly it. I was like, I'm doing this. I've got this goal. I'm going to make it happen no matter what.
Yeah. And now, like we have a goal right now, but it's a little more ambiguous. It's like, okay, so now we're going to grow, and something else is out there, but we'll see what it is.
Yeah. So maybe maybe the challenge for me right now, because I still have macros I'm trying to hit, or I'm trying to keep myself from eating too much or gorging. That's where I'm finding the challenge. It's like hitting the macros is not as compelling. Whereas
it's lost a little luster.
Definitely it has. Yeah. So before the show, like you said, laser focused. I knew what I was going to do. There were challenges. There were days where I would just daydream about food. I'd sit there daydreaming about the chicken I was going to eat when I got home.
Wow, when you're daydreaming about chicken, that's how you know you've got a problem.
I was like, oh, chicken, I'm going to put some Tony's on the chicken. Tony's, the spice. It's good stuff.
I haven't used that.
That saved me. Tony's and mustard. And
Tony's is what? I feel like we need to detour here really quick. Tell me about Tony's.
It's Cajun seasoning. They use it all the time. And I lived in Louisiana for a couple of years, and it's like all over the place in Louisiana.
So is it like a rub or that kind of thing?
It's just like a salt sprinkle. So it's a mix of a bunch of different things like salt and I don't know what spices. But it says on the bottle, use like salt. So I did.
I mean, I can do that. So do you just get that at like any store? You have to special order that?
They sell it everywhere. Yeah, it's like Tony Chacheries, something like that. But
okay, I gotta keep my eyes peeled for that. I'm gonna try it.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry. Please continue. I got sidetracked.
So I definitely had my challenges dating about chicken. I got really cold the last 2-3 weeks. I don't know if it's because body fat got low. I don't know. I felt cold all the time. And then social events definitely were a challenge. My wife set up this gauntlet of social events where like hanging out all weekend with people, and they're all drinking. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to eat my meals. I got prepped here.
I was actually conspiring with her behind your back. I'm like, he's having too easy of a time here. Can we make this a little bit more difficult?
Seemed like it. Yeah, the difficulty level was ratcheted up. But it was just, again, having that goal and knowing, okay, I'm going to do this. It made it easier. There were challenges, but I knew I was going to do it. I was committed.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe we need to do a little coaching here on the podcast and figure out, like, kind of define the next goal a little bit more clearly, just because what I feel really is like the make or break thing between people who really skyrocket, like their progression really takes a huge step forward between shows, and those people who improve a little bit and they come in a little bit better, but it's like, yeah, okay, I can see them, they're still the same person, versus somebody who's like, holy crap, what happened to them, is the amount of focus they can apply in the off season. And it's something where I've been in this growth phase personally myself for so long. Like, I am clearly the poster child for how not to do it correctly. Like, I have definitely kind of like, and especially the last month or so has been really dicey for me. So I'm actually looking forward to changing gears before too long and kind of trying to get some of that focus back. But at the same time, like, I'm focused right now. I've got a date on my calendar. It's out there. But still, nonetheless, there's just a little bit of that edge missing. But I think having it is kind of the prerequisite. You've got to start there. And so we've talked a little bit about vaguely what some goals are and what some objectives are rather than specific dates or anything like that. But part of it is kind of understanding, like, this is a finite process. You've only got so long to make improvements, and then it's going to be time to see what it is again.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about during pre-contest, and actually, before that in the growth phase. Also, you travel a good bit. You're not like a traveling salesman. You're not on the road every week, but you get out of your home base pretty frequently. So tell us a little bit about how that made things challenging and how you adapted to it.
So yeah, I traveled to, I go to a lot of continuing education meetings. I'm an orthodontist, so I go to these orthodontic meetings. So the travel was during the growth phase. It was very hard to keep things on the rails. Very hard.
I remember that.
Yes, definitely. So, I was more likely to say, just this day's, I'm done. Especially when people are out late, people are out drinking. So it's easy to succumb to peer pressure. So, when I was in the cut, so contest prep was January 1st to April 24th. And so during that time, I had to go in with a lot more of a plan when traveling. So I got a Yeti. I would have meals prepped, and I would put them in the Yeti, and I'd check it on the airplane, and then go pick it up at the baggage claim. And then I would just eat that. I would almost exclusively eat that stuff. And when people were out late, I'd either just exclude myself, or I'd go out and force myself to just sit there and drink, like a soda with lime or something like that.
Yeah.
And what was helpful was I just told people at the meetings, I tell them I'm prepping for a show, and it was actually turned out to be a positive peer pressure. People appreciated it, and they didn't pressure me. Just have one drink or just take a bite of this. They were actually pretty good about it. So that was very helpful, telling people, and they knew, they kind of grew to expect it of me. So I took advantage of that.
If there's one thing that people take from this podcast, I hope it's that. Because a lot of people think that there's this pressure on them to engage in things socially that really isn't there. Like, they manufacture it in their own heads a lot. And I think if you do come through and just come clean right away, hey, I'm doing this. If you can, make my life a little easier, just let me do my thing. It's cool. You do your thing. I'm not going to judge you. I don't care. We'll just have a mutual, complete disinterest for what everybody else is doing here. That's the way to do it. But just put it all out there so that, like, you might actually develop kind of an unexpected support system that you didn't know was going to be there.
That's exactly what happened. And by and large, I found most people were like, "Oh, really? What are you doing?" And I wouldn't get into too much detail, but most people almost everyone has some kind of physical fitness goal. They all know they're drinking too much, eating too much. And so they're intrigued. Oh man, yeah, I need to exercise more. What are you doing? So it kind of started a conversation about the topic I like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I found it was good. They didn't label me as the weird dude who's eating his own stuff. And
maybe they did behind your back, but not to your face, at least.
Yeah, they might. Maybe they do that. I don't know. They
probably
do. But yeah, I'd go to a dinner and just get like a Heineken 0.0. So there's zero alcohol in that, and I'd sip that. And there's still carbohydrates, so I'd still try to put it on MyFitnessPal. But people were supportive. That was actually very important. Once I started doing that, I found travel became a little bit easier.
That's cool. Tell me a little bit more about this Yeti. Would you pack that with like frozen meals?
Yeah. So it's stuff that was just refrigerated. So
just refrigerated, so not even frozen.
Yeah. Not frozen. So I've used during the prep, I've used like a meal prep service.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have meals, especially if I knew I was gonna be traveling, I would get extra meals, and then I would just stack them in the Yeti, and then put in something frozen, and it keeps cold really well. And then when I get to the hotel, I'd either put them in the fridge, or some hotels will let you actually bring a fridge to your room if you ask them for a fridge. Kind of depends on the hotel.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Or microwave. Someone will bring a microwave to your room.
Assuming there isn't one in there already.
Yeah. It seems like most of them don't have them in there, but
interesting.
Someone will bring them to you. Not all.
That's cool.
Cold chicken. It's lots of fun.
And so since you're checking that, you don't have to worry about liquids, what can get through TSA, et cetera.
Yeah. So that's the issue is I pack because there would be this food and then there'd be the big Yeti like the ice pack.
Yeah.
The ice pack. I actually never tried to take that through security because I just assumed it wouldn't get through. Mm-hmm. So that's why I checked it.
Yeah, well, from what I haven't done it myself. I've checked stuff before, but I haven't tried to take anything through security. From what I understand, there's a couple of different types of those freezer packs. Some that are like gel filled, and some that are they're filled with like a sand kind of substance almost. And that is TSA approved all the way. The gel ones will make it through if they are frozen solid.
Okay.
And if you have liquids that are frozen or gels that are frozen, they will make it through. But depending on who you ask, like you're always putting yourself at the mercy of the mood of the TSA agent at the same time. Like one of those very, very nebulous things is peanut butter. It's like 50-50 whether it makes it through or not.
Yep, I've had it confiscated and I've had it make it through.
Yeah.
So the Yeti, I would just check it because I was like, I don't want to deal with them saying, no, you can't take this through. You can throw it away or you can go back to security and check it. I just didn't want to deal with it. So I'd always just check it. It was never an issue. Those things they're pretty sturdy. So they made it through.
Definitely. And was it big enough or was it small enough that you could check it or you could try and take it through security if you wanted to?
I probably could. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I could have brought it through. Yeah, they've got like a small little. I don't know the dimensions, but you probably could if you could fit it in the overhead compartment pretty easily.
Pretty borderline at least.
Like the sand stuff, maybe that would make it through. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. So your typical routine was probably like trying to figure out your usual like daily routine at one of these conferences or whatever it was. Figure out how many days, how many meals am I going to have to put together, and kind of pre-plan pretty much the entire trip before you leave.
That was exactly it. Yep.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, tons of fun. And I'd bring, and then when I was there, I mean, if I needed extra carbs, I could get like some rice cakes at the store, or I would get like peanut butter for fat or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to fill in the blanks.
So, and I guess the other thing about that is you have a pretty clear objective when you're coming back. Like, I better be bringing back an empty cooler.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Kind of makes it a little easier that way.
Yep, exactly.
How many trips did you have during prep?
I think I had 3. Yeah, I can't remember, but I think I had 3. But one of them was like this full week meeting. It was like a 5-day meeting. So I had to prep really hard for that one.
Man,
that was challenging.
That's a pretty intense trip. And how far out were you for that one? Do you remember?
That was March. So that was about a month and a half before the show.
That was about 2/3 of the way through then.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Good times, man.
A lot of planning for that.
But you didn't have any personal trips. They were all business trips.
There were some personal trips. Yeah, I mean stuff. Yeah, like my wife wanted to stay out with friends on the weekend, so we'd go to their cabin and stuff like that. So again, same thing. I just packed my stuff and tell them what I was doing and suffer through it.
It's always a little easier when you can drive as opposed to trying to take your act through the airport.
That made it a lot easier driving because I can just pack all my stuff. I think I brought like my canister of protein powder. I didn't bring that on the plane, but when you can drive, you just throw it in the car.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about training. Like we started prep in January. Now, if I remember correctly, I mean, there wasn't really a gym situation or anything like that with where you train. So you didn't have to worry about like gym availability or anything like that. You got it all right there. Talk to me a little bit about how training went for you, kind of the ebb and flow of it a little bit. Good days, bad days. Did things kind of tend to trend in a direction as prep went on, or did you feel pretty good physically throughout the whole thing?
Felt pretty good throughout most of it. I definitely got really tired the last 2-3 weeks. I felt like I was making progress or able to push things pretty hard all the way through, but then 2-3 weeks or even the last month, it definitely got tiring, especially doing like two-a-day cardio sessions. And
sorry about that.
That's hey, thank you. It got me prepped. I was really happy for the physique I got. So, that was probably the hardest part. I mean, I get to where I was like 2/3 of the way through a workout. I just didn't want to finish it. Or just keeping up intensity, it got challenging. So I just would push through, and try not to cut back. But
Was that a pretty new sensation for you?
yeah, feeling depleted like that for sure.
Yeah. So typically, like in the course of like your pre-contest prep days, like before we started, you were like, "Hey, I'm going to work out," and pretty much always had a good time getting up for it. Always felt good. I mean, everybody has their days here and there, but you never had those stretches where you're like, "Oh my God!" Like you're always pretty gung ho and pretty up for it all the time.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, a lot of days I try to do something every day, but there are days where I don't feel like it, but then 5-10 minutes in, start lifting, I'm like, all right, ready to go. And then I feel great through the whole workout. But yeah, these days, I normally wasn't flagging by the end, but the last month, definitely by the end, I had to push through the last 20-30 minutes a lot of times.
Yeah, especially when that cardio starts to get up there, the carbs are kind of low. It's really easy to just say, oh, fuck my life.
Exactly.
A little bit. So let's take it through show day. I guess one question that I want to ask is, what was the thing that surprised you the most about show day going in?
I was surprised, and I guess I should have known this, how many times I had to go out on stage.
You did 3 classes, right?
I did 3 classes. I see, because I did men's physique was the division, is that right?
Category.
Okay, I still can't keep that straight.
Nobody can.
Yeah, men's physique, and so I did. There was true novice, and then masters 40 plus, and then the open. I think that was it. I think so. Yeah, it was three classes. So I went out the first time, and then went out the second time, and by the third time, I'm like, I was thinking the crowd must be thinking, oh great, this guy again. So I felt ridiculous eventually, but I mean that's just the way it was. So that's what I get for signing up for a lot of classes.
Were they all pretty much like right back to back?
Pretty close. Yeah, this show was tight because they did men in the morning and then women in the afternoon. So they kept those separate.
Yeah, so this show didn't have a big split between prejudging and finals, which is really common in NPC
No, yeah,
shows.
They did all the prejudging, and then it was like, okay, we're gonna have a 20-minute break, and then finals start, something like that. So it was pretty quick.
So, but it wasn't like, I think what it's usually referred to as is running format. It wasn't quite that, because in that format you would do like men's physique, prejudging, lineups. Okay, cool. A quick little break, tabulate individual walks for men's physique, and then awards presentation. But here it was like, we're going to do men's bodybuilding, we're going to do men's physique, we're going to do classic physique, intermission, and then I assume posing routines, and then award presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is still okay, because anything that you can do to avoid having like an 8-hour gap in the middle of the day is a bonus as far as I'm concerned. Had you attended a show before this one as a spectator?
I hadn't. I tried to, and never. I think I registered one, and then my wife scheduled some social event. So I'm like, okay, babe, I'll go to that. I won't go to the show.
More challenges.
South Georgia, yeah. Yeah, I think it would have been helpful to go to a show. So that was, I guess, another thing that surprised me. I had worked on posing. I worked with Kelly Lynn, who's your last guest. And that was very, very helpful. She helped me with my front pose, back pose, and even turning, transitioning. But I just wasn't prepared for the amount of stage presence that it required, because I couldn't have known, having never done a show and never having attended a show. But having done a show now I can picture myself. I know that I've got to work. Got to work on even things like walking out on stage and having confidence.
Yeah.
Turn and even transitions, turning. Like I got to a point where I was just like, all right, here's my front pose, and then I'm just going to turn around. And other guys were doing all this fancy stuff in between. That looked kind of cool.
All their little ninja moves.
Yeah, the ninja moves. So I had no ninja moves. It's like, all right, here's my front. And then eventually it was clear that once they do the, sizing everybody up, moving everybody to front and side, it's like, I ain't got a chance with these open guys. When you're on the end, you got to keep on smiling. And so I just I almost gave up on transitions. But now I know when I do another show, I've spent a lot more time working on even just walking out on stage, and then transitions between poses, and also the smiling. I think I've got to figure something out. So you and me
both.
Yeah. So that's something the guy who did the canning, he gave me good advice. I think I texted this to you. He gave me really good advice, because he asked me, he asked me after I'd done all my posing stuff. He was like doing a touch up before it was right before finals or something, and he said, "Can I ask you what are you thinking about when you're up there smiling? When you're smiling?" And I said, "I think my wife." I'm looking because my wife was in the audience, and my wife. He said, "Well, because it looks like you just got a bad Christmas present, and you're like forcing yourself to smile." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that hurts." Especially because I'm an orthodontist, like I'm in the smile business. I'm like,
You
I
are.
thought I had a great smile, but apparently I was like forcing myself to smile and smile the whole time, and so I think it looked totally forced. That was hard. After that, when I felt I was even more self-conscious going out for finals. So I was like, okay, make this smile look real. Probably looked even worse after that.
You got that deer in headlights. Oh man, I just got a Charlie Brown tie kind of smile.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I don't know. Some people just come by that naturally. I do not, and so that's why, even in classic physique, it's a little bit more serious. It's a little less like presentational. You still have to flow, but I think in classic physique you can kind of get away with not smiling a little bit, and in bodybuilding you can as well. Although anytime you can pull it off, it's always going to have a better look. I remember last year when we were doing a photo shoot for our band for our album cover art. We met with the photographer, and I'm like, God, this is going to be awful. I hate getting my picture taken. And she's like, Darren, I just need you to stand there and look serious. I'm like, I got that.
No problem.
Yeah, like, you don't need me to smile. That's perfect. She's like, no, I need you to look kind of pissed off a little bit. I'm like, that's my default state. Now we're talking. Why can't judges ask for that? Like, stand up on stage and look a little pissed off. That'd be awesome. I would love that.
Yeah, that's what I mean, I'm thinking, I guess, for next time, I mean, mixing it up a little bit, because I was trying to smile with teeth the whole time. And I think I don't know, I guess there's got to work on different smiles and changing it up a little bit. Some seriousness, some smiling. I don't know.
You got to have like a relaxed face.
Yeah.
Like a stoic but still interested look to your face.
Something like
and
that.
then bust out the smile every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
And not have it look super fake. But part of it also is, have you ever done any kind of performance, public speaking, that kind of stuff?
I've done some public speaking. Yeah, and a little bit of performance. Yeah.
I think that's really like the best preparation for getting up on stage, because if you haven't done that, the first thing that's going to catch you off guard is just what it's like to be the center of attention with a whole bunch of people in front of you. And that can be really disorienting for a lot of people. And then on a bodybuilding show, you got the lights coming down. You've got some music coming in, which during prejudging is usually pretty low, but for finals, they'll crank that up. You've got instructions coming in through the loudspeakers, which depending on the venue, you might not be able to hear super well. So all that stuff is like, it's a perfect recipe for you to forget how to pose. Because there's so much disorienting stuff happening all at once, especially if you've never been there before.
Yeah, that's disorienting, and then all the thoughts going through my head, everything's disorienting. You know, thinking too much, and yeah, it became really hard to kind of hold the posing routine together. I think it's like the posing got worse as the show went on.
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense, because I mean, you're holding it, you're getting more fatigued, and then you have, the longer you spend on stage, the more time you have to think about everything that you're doing wrong.
Yep.
So then you start to overthink it more and more.
Exactly.
So it doesn't sound like you had the experience where you didn't have the experience where the whole thing was just over in a flash and it's like, what happened? It sounded like you had time to process what was going on.
Yeah, it felt like it just kept going and going.
Like you were up there for an hour.
Like, I'm out on stage again. Oh my gosh. That's what it felt like at times.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. So I guess if time machine, like we've got a time machine now, you'd probably recommend going and attending a show before you actually compete in one.
Yeah, if I did anything differently, that's probably what I had done. I would have gone to a show and seen the format and pictured. Yeah.
Okay. And we started posing work kind of late in the process as well. I think was it around like 8 weeks out or something like that?
8 weeks out. Yeah. Yeah. So I did, and that was another thing I would say, just if you're going to get a posing coach, just stick with one posing coach. Because I did, I did posing with Kelly Lynn, which was super, super helpful. We did it over Skype. That was great. I mean, I had no idea to flare my lats. I thought I had a deficient back. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I remember that conversation. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, dude, it's just body awareness, mind muscle connection. They're there. Trust me.
Exactly. So like the photos I'd send to you, I try to flex my back, and I'm like, it looks like it's pinching in. It looks weird. And then Kelly then taught me to flare my lats and just present myself. But then 2 days before, I worked with a coach, a guy that was at the show. He was really good. His name was Kenny Wallach. But he was really good, but he taught me to pose a little differently. And so then I had this brand new advice in my head. I'm trying to do his pose 2 days before I go out there. So I think I just confused myself. I should have just stuck with what Kelly Lynn taught me. He taught me some good stuff, but I should have just stuck with what she did and just not confused it.
So it's like you had pose A, pose B, and then you did pose C, which was neither of the aforementioned.
I had like 36 hours to practice that.
Yeah, that's putting yourself in a rough situation.
Yep.
Yeah. Tell me about, what was the venue? Where were you at?
It was at a hotel, Westin Hotel.
Okay, so you're in like a conference hall.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. What was just for people that haven't gone here before, I want to kind of put them in the room with you a little bit. So you walk into the conference hall, what's the setup? Do you walk in and like everything's in front of you? You've got to like walk through everybody to get to a backstage area. There's like a little curtain set up. What's going on?
Yeah, you walk in and they had like the meeting beforehand. Like 8:00, they had the men's meeting, and then by 8:30, so there was the curtain back there. The curtain was back behind. We were just sitting in front of the stage in chairs. They were telling us about his work, and then at 8:30, they were like, "All right." They were like, they kind of talked to us like we were a bunch of little kids. Like, "All right, guys, you need to get backstage right now. Don't go. You're not the tour guide for Grandma. Don't go show Grandma around. You need to get backstage." So then we just all walked backstage, and they let the audience in, I think at 9:00. They wouldn't let them back till then. So we walked behind the curtain, and backstage was like, it was like this small little rectangle. It was like, felt like it was like 50 feet deep and maybe like 100 yards wide. And so you just had all these guys crammed back in there.
Was it the same room that the audience were in, just separated with like a curtain, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Separate by curtain.
Okay.
Yeah, so backstage, and just had everybody back there pumping up. They had a tarp they wanted us to be on. I guess they didn't want to get tanning.
No spray tan drip from the feet onto the floor. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so it was like a big room separated by a curtain, exactly like that. And then stage was there, and we were just all hanging out behind the curtain most of the time.
Okay. And what was the I mean, we're in a world here where there's still a pandemic going on. So what was the audience like? Were they restricting crowds at all, or was it just anything goes?
It was pretty much anything goes. They said in their the stuff that they released when they sent, all the emails, stuff like that, they said it will be following restrictions, but it was pretty much a free for all. It wasn't.
Well, in Georgia, I don't really think they have too many restrictions anyway.
They don't really. Yeah, if you want to talk about the ultimate COVID incubator, you sit in that backstage. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is if you want to get it, this is where the place to get it.
Yeah.
I've been backstage, so I wasn't worried about it. So, they weren't too strict.
Gotcha. Okay. And the other thing that I've seen this before in shows that are in those conference halls at hotels, which I think is really, I think it's probably like the easiest venue to do a show in if you're a promoter and trying to set it up. I also think it's probably like the least nice. And the thing is, for me, like, I have a theater background, so I've done shows, so I'm all about like stage lights, house lights, and like when you are having a performance on stage, the lights aren't on the audience. And in a hall like that you typically don't have the control over that. So I'm really curious, what was the lighting setup in there? This is a stupid question, but I'm dying to know.
Well, that's something I thought about. So they had some lights, but they didn't have any kind of spotlights or any kind of, I didn't see any really special lights. So I had heard, I don't know if it's from you or someone else, about how hot it gets up on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel like the lights were super bright.
They probably weren't very close.
Yeah, and it wasn't very hot. There was one guy sweating like crazy, but I never really broke a sweat out on stage, anything like that.
Well, you said you've been cold for the last couple of weeks. That's probably has something to do with it.
Maybe that's why.
Would they They had, I'm assuming they had an expediter backstage helping people file up, get in position.
Yeah,
Um, were,
two or three people.
okay. Were they like on it and keeping things moving and no issues with being in the right place at the right time or anything?
Yeah, yeah, they were on it. There were no issues. They would call out numbers, but because it was such a small group, I mean, it was probably like 50 guys total in the show. So
Hmm.
it was pretty easy for them to get people lined up. I did have to pay attention. I mean, like, especially because this one moved fast. I think you told me don't put your earbuds in. Don't be sitting there listening to stuff. I would
Yeah.
have missed my call out if I had been listening to anything. So I had to kind of just stay focused.
I always laugh whenever I see guys or women sitting backstage with headphones in. I'm like, you have a level of confidence that I do not possess.
Yeah, totally.
Like, no, thank you. Not going to roll the dice on that one.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so I made a point to I kind of chatted with other competitors and especially guys that were in my men's peak so we could all be aware. I just would talk with them and just pay attention.
yeah. If I'm going here, you better follow me. That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Did they call out and give you like a notice for like, hey, men's physique, true novice, start pumping up now or anything like that? Or were you on your own to figure that out?
Yeah, they kind of did that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can see though they would do so they called us over for touch-ups. The tanning company, the one that they had the show sponsored tanning company. So I got my tan with them. And they did touch-ups beforehand. So they would look you over, make sure there weren't any splotches or anything like that, and then they'd spray the oil or whatever it is they put on you.
Yeah.
And then you'd see guys start pumping up, and I think they said to pump up, but I just saw other guys pump up. I'm like, all right, these guys are doing push-ups. I'm gonna start doing push-ups.
Apparently, this is the thing we do.
let's do this. So they brought back these. They had like a couple of sets of 20-pound dumbbells and 15-pound dumbbells. So you had like guys just passing those around and grabbing them and doing random stuff. I brought bands, so just like a couple of sets of bands. The bands were super helpful.
That's the thing is, if there's weights backstage, it's like 4 dumbbells for 50 guys. I'm like,
exactly. That's exactly what it was. Like they brought back these dumbbells. I was like, can I use these things? I don't know. Whose are these? I wasn't sure if it was somebody's, but yeah, it wasn't like they had a dumbbell rack or anything. They just brought back several sets of dumbbells and just dropped them on the floor and grabbing them.
It's like some friend of the promoters, he asked at the last minute, hey, you got some dumbbells in your garage? Can you bring those over? Yeah, I got a 15, I got a 20, and I got a 30. Is that good enough? Sure, bring it.
Exactly what it was like.
Yeah, that's pretty typical. So yes, bring bands. I think all this is just super, super valuable stuff because even if you go and you attend, 2, 3, I think I probably saw 7 or 8 shows myself in person before I ever competed. Just because, I was in that mode where it's like, well, I'm getting myself ready for that, but I'm not in a big rush. I just want to be really, really familiar with how the whole thing works. And so I even went backstage with a friend at a show that he was doing before I ever competed. So I just think it's super valuable because even if you go and attend, you don't really know. I like that you're kind of taking us into that room where we can kind of get a sense of what it's like. I mean, it's kind of chaotic. There's people all over the place. But the other thing is that I've always found at shows is there's a sense of camaraderie there because usually bodybuilding is something that tends to isolate you from other people. And so you go to a show and yeah, it's competitive. You're all competing with one another, but at the same time, you're all doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of unusual to be around a whole bunch of people that are all doing the same thing when it's a weird thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a really cool part of it. I mean, like I was in the Masters 40 plus, there were 4 of us, only 4 guys, but the other guys, I've got 3 kids. They had 3. 2 of them had 3 kids. One guy had like 6 kids.
Oh,
it was,
man.
It's like, this is awesome. All these dads of 3 doing this thing. So it was really cool camaraderie. We're all into this fitness. We're all into this thing that makes us kind of weird outside of this. That was great.
Redefining the dad bod.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. So show day comes and goes. And I remember there was a picture that you sent. I got to just pull this up. I'm going to show it to the camera and hopefully it comes through because I was like, man, that is a happy dude right there. So here is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what is that? What kind of pizza, what kind of beer are we looking at there?
It's some kind of extra meat pizza. It's this place called Fellini's here in Atlanta. And then the beer was some kind of IPA. And I did put down that whole picture, and I already had 2 more before that. I'm sorry, Darren. That was allowed, right?
Hey, post show, all bets are off. I've seen worse.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was actually fantastic. And it was, this was actually, I was happy because this has been like a lifelong goal. Cause like I said, I was a chunky kid, and they used to call, my nickname when I was a teenager was Nintendo Belly, because I played video games. That was all I did. They called me Nintendo Belly. Jacob was the fat kid. And so I've always
Just so you know, I'm never calling you anything else now.
Thank you. I'll take it.
I mean, this is a guy who I nicknamed myself Soft Serve in an Instagram post last week. So,
Awesome. I'm gonna call you that then.
I can roll with it. Yeah, please do. Please do.
So I was super happy because I finished the show. I was happy. I mean, I was happy eating the food, but eating the food afterwards, it's kind of a letdown. You're daydreaming about food. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so amazing to eat pizza and drink beer, and it's fine. It's great. But I think, I mean, I was just happy that I'd achieved this lifelong goal, and this show was the means to get there. And now I want to do more and grow more. But it was definitely, it was like a really a landmark moment in my life, because I'd never ever been in that kind of shape before. I'd send people pictures. I had a picture of me with my wife. I think I sent you that picture, and like, she's just this normal person standing there, and I'm standing there just looking totally jacked with a six pack and tan. And I sent that to friends, and they're like, "Is that real?" They thought it was Photoshop. Like, that was cool. That was amazing.
That's what you want. You want to prompt the Photoshop question.
Yeah, exactly. They thought it was fake.
Yeah.
That made me so happy. So
that's awesome.
This lifelong goal.
That's cool. Well, congrats. I mean, you busted your ass, and I mean, there was never a point during prep where I was really worried about you. And it's not often that I can say that. I'm like, just based on the stuff that you would say in check-ins and just how the report would look every week, I'm like, he's got this. So now, the big question, was there ever a point that I should have been worried?
During prep, I don't think there was. I don't think there ever was.
That's cool.
I was committed. I was all in. The growth phase got a little ugly sometimes. So I think you got a little worried maybe in the growth phase. Maybe you should be worried now. I have to check in tomorrow. Can we just skip check-in tomorrow, Darren?
Well, if you want to do it right here in front of everybody else, we can skip it tomorrow. You bet.
Skill numbers.
That's okay. I mean, during this phase, you're supposed to grow. So, the analogy that I always make is the credit card analogy on a growth season, which is your credit card has a limit, and when you reach that limit, you've got to pay it off. So similarly, our limit here is your comfort level with your body. And when you get to a point where you're like, holy shit, I am so uncomfortable with where I'm at, well, guess what? Your credit card's maxed out. We got to pay it off a little bit. So everything that we do that's off plan, or when you're at a surplus, just every day a little bit contributes to your credit card balance. And so what we want to do is just, slow the rate at which that credit card fills up. But, post show, you're going to take an empty credit card and you're going to fill it maybe halfway up post show. Yeah. So that's not uncommon. It's not necessarily desirable, but it is okay.
Right.
So I would say that whatever it is, you're probably fine.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's felt like, man, I needed release, but it's been hard to kind of pull. I'm not in like a nosedive or tailspin, but just pulling back the reins and getting back on some kind of plan. It's a little harder. I'll get there, but
yeah. Well, it's hard also when you have that Photoshop moment where you're like, holy crap, this is me. And then in a couple of weeks, it's like, oh, I don't look like that anymore.
Totally. Yeah. And that actually brings up, so a couple of things I wanted to say. One piece of advice that you gave me that was incredibly helpful, and you said, I thought that I tell people this all the time, but you said it to me when I was 2 or 3 weeks into prep, and I think I'd gotten a little loosey goosey with my numbers, or maybe like a cheap. I can't remember what it was, but you said, and I think you assume everyone knows, but you said bodybuilding is a dieting competition.
Yeah,
it's a dieting competition. And I had never heard that before. And you said it, and I was like, that's it. He was like, you gotta understand, when you go out with friends, or when you're on vacation, you're in a bodybuilding competition. These guys are not. So it's a dieting competition. And if you're eating something, your competitors probably aren't eating that. So that helped me. That clicked. That was super, super helpful. And one other thing that was very helpful. So like you said, the Photoshop moment, this was actually it was cathartic for me, because I realized that's just a snapshot in time. And most people that post their stuff on Instagram, most people that post these amazing photos, they do not walk around looking like that all the time. And
they post that same snapshot in time ad nauseum. Yes.
Exactly.
So it creates the illusion that that's what they look like.
So I could post all these pictures from my show day, and man, I look incredible. But I don't walk around looking like that all the time. And I don't think I want to feel like that all the time.
Probably not.
I do not. So I realize, it's great to look that way, but it's not really worth the price you pay to get that. It's not worth to keep that up all the time. So it may be a little more accepting of my body outside of that, because you've talked about before, we all have a little bit of body dysmorphia. And I'm like, why am I not jacked all the time like these other people? But now I realize that's just a snapshot, and very few people, if any, walk around looking like that all the time. And it's okay to walk around not jacked, not totally ripped, not soft, but I mean, not looking perfect all the time. That's the way most people are. And that's, if you're going to feel normal, that's the way you look, and that's the way it is. You don't have to feel self-conscious about it.
Exactly right. I mean, you've got to be comfortable with, some degree of fluctuation in your body composition. And the thing that makes this difficult is you get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm at this level of leanness that I've never seen before, and letting that go for the first time and kind of watching it float away off into the distance like a free bird. It's a little depressing, but it is necessary also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other parting words of wisdom for us? From the now seasoned veteran.
Yeah, so anybody that's doing it, that's going to do a show, I would say going to a show, I think would be helpful. Definitely to picture yourself in that. And I'd say if you're not working with Darren, you should work with Darren, because he's a coach.
I appreciate that. Shameless plug. I'll pay you later.
He was really, really great. Super helpful. I mean, if I hadn't had you as a coach, to check in, that accountability was huge. So if you want to get serious about something, either some kind of deadline, or some kind of accountability, it'll keep you on track better than anything else. So yeah. That's all
I agree completely, because, that's why I have a coach. I know what to do, but part of it is, you got to know the stuff. You've got to be able to recognize that stuff in yourself, which it's a lot harder for me to do that. Like, I can look at you, I can look at any other client, and I can look at their stuff and know exactly what to do. But if I take my own pictures and I write up my own report and I read that, all I see is bullshit. I'm like, I don't know. Who's this guy? Who's this clown? What's he doing? He's fat. Who's this guy? I mean, you can't see yourself fairly.
It's a little like doing your own. I mean, I could write my own workout program, but I hate my own workouts. I just don't enjoy them. I like your workouts better.
Well, and when I write my own, when I write up my own, and if I follow my own, I feel like, well, I wrote this, but you know what? What if I tried this instead? Because for me, it's work. Like, writing that stuff and experimenting with it is work, and you can't work when you're trying to train.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, that sounds weird. You can't do your business while you're trying to train.
Yeah, that makes
you got to separate the two.
Yeah, so that was another thing that was helpful, just having someone else's plan. I mean, you gave me a plan, but even if you're out of a book or whatever, just get a plan and stick with it. I mean, stick with it and be consistent.
Get a plan and trust the plan. And so if it comes from a person who created it for you, that helps. If you're pulling out a book, you're like, well, why should I trust this? Maybe it's worked for some people. I don't know. But, wherever it comes from, trust it and follow it until you have reason not to.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something that was actually cool working with you, because the peak week, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. You told me, like, you're going to do this with water, this with carbs. I'm like, all right. I was like, I was like kind of doubting, like, what the heck would I have done? But I know you've done it before, and I just trusted in what you said, and I did exactly what you said, and it worked. I looked amazing on show day. So. And
we didn't do a whole lot. We just manipulated a couple things, just a few tweaks. We didn't do any crazy like sodium loading or depletion or anything like that.
No, it was basically drink a lot of water at the beginning of the week, cut it back, and then low carbs, increased carbs. That was it, and that worked.
Yeah, it's like this. One goes up while the other goes down.
Yeah, didn't take any fancy diuretics or anything like that. It was perfect.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, I appreciate it. The insight here has been awesome, and I know other people get a lot out of this. First-time competitors, aspiring first-time competitors, which, there's a lot of those people that listen to this show, but also just the perspective on switching phases, going from growth phase into a cut, coming out of it, understanding that's difficult. Got to let go of some things. You've got to shift your focus a little bit and tighten things up when you go into a cut. Like during growth phase, things got a little sloppy. That's fine. We were okay with that. We let that happen to some extent. But then we also knew like we had to flip that switch once prep started.
Yep.
And you did a great job with that too. So
yep.
All the credit to you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. All right. Anything else you want to promote your orthodontist business? I always say like share your social media or whatever, but
right, we're in Atlanta, and yeah, we're awesome, but you're probably too far away, so
not really preaching to the right crowd, probably. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Jacob, it's been awesome. I appreciate it, and we'll have check-in tomorrow, right?
All right, I will check in. I haven't missed one. I haven't missed a check-in. So
no, you're awesome. You're a rock star, and I don't want this to be the first one because now I'm kind of scared.
It won't be. It's not that, but it's
whatever it is, we'll work through it. All right, have a good one, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.